Today on the Revealed Report, we talk about Reserve Chair Jerome Powell cutting down on the interest rates. What does that mean? What are we looking at? What is my personal opinion on it? We also discuss how Hollywood is in an uproar because Jimmy Kimmel has been taken off air indefinitely. We'll also talk about how Lion Joe Biden and his administration was trying to go after their political opponents, and Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA was on that list. And we'll talk about how they were using January 6th and the terminology they were using to justify going after their political opposition and why they always think President Trump is doing it to them. I'm glad you're back to the Revealed Report. I'm your host, John Wilson. Let's go. Well, we're grateful you're tuned back into the Revealed Report. We have some great announcements here at the Revealed Radio Network. As I spoke yesterday, I'll say again this Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will be debuting our first episodes of the Revealed Kids content, and it is Revealed Kids Bedtime Stories. There will be two back to back stories. One that leans more on biblical content, the second one that leans more on patriotic content, but there's overlap between both of them. So we pray that you allow your kids to listen to pro God, pro American content as they go to sleep at night. Also, if you're into suspenseful novel thrillers that has truth packed into it, you might want to check out my book, The Final Flame. You can get it on Amazon, or you can email us at revealedpublications@gmail.com to figure out how to get your signed edition. Enough suspense for the men, enough action for the men, and enough romance for the women. Well, welcome back to the Revealed Report. I want to talk about how Jerome Powell, the federal chair, is now lowering interest rates. And what does that mean? Now, usually interest rates are spiked up to combat inflation. When you have too many dollars chasing too few goods, you raise the interest rates to try to get that money back out of circulation, get it out of circulation and burn it and try to normalize the economy. However, I support Trump's tariffs. And if you did not catch my previous episode on why I think tariffs are a good thing and why I support Trump's tariffs, I believe I titled it How Tariffs Can Save America or something like that. You ought to go back and listen to that. I have had people request me to put it into book form, to which we will try to do that in the soon coming weeks. Right now, we're trying to get the kids' content out. There's been a great demand for kids' content. So we want to get that out to parents that want to preserve a love for God and a love for this nation in the heart of their children. So we're working on that first, but we will get these other books coming out soon. I also have another book called Blessed and Broke: How America Substituted God for Debt. We have a book called The Landmass Beast that's coming out. We got some theological books. If you like the Oracle podcast, which, by the way, will be coming out tonight, the Oracle podcast. So if you like to join me for deep theological dives into the Bible, join me tonight, 7:30 Central Standard Time, as the Oracle will be released, and we'll dive into God's Word. So we have many books that are coming out, but right now we got a great focus on children's content. We think that many parents and many children will like the content that will be airing this Saturday. And then every Saturday night after that, we will have two children's audible books after we get about 25 or 30 of them on both avenues, on the pro God side, on the pro American side. We will begin to put those in book forms, and we will make those purchasable on the Revealed Radio Network.site, or you can email us at revealedradionetwork@gmail.com, and we can give you details on how you can purchase those books. They'll be on Amazon as well. So Jerome Powell, he is slashing the interest rates. And of course, President Trump believes he's too late. There's great debate on the economics of this, will it help us, will it hurt us? And there's great uncertainty. I don't claim to be an expert in this, but I do believe that if Trump is going to exercise tariffs, and I support the tariffs, as a matter of fact, historically, our founders predominantly supported tariffs as well. And I talked about that in that previous episode. However, to do it, you have to offset it by lowering taxes and slashing regulation, and lowering interest rates would help as well, so that you can stimulate business in the United States and you can help promote businesses here. So I'm for it. I think it's a good thing. I think Jerome Powell is not trying to be a bad actor. I really don't believe he's trying to be devious or mischievous or a bad actor. I do believe he's trying his best to do what he thinks is best. I just happen to believe that President Trump probably has it right. And I say that because historically, many times people on the left would come out and say he's radically insane. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's going to shipwreck the country. And then some on the conservative side would begin to also believe that maybe we're going to be wrong this time. And too many people are scared to be wrong, especially in this climate and age where there is no mercy and no grace, which is a byproduct of getting rid of God, by the way. Because if you have God, you have mercy and you have grace. But if you have humanism, a lot of times you lack mercy and grace. And so they don't want to be wrong. They're too ashamed, too scared to be wrong. So they'll begin to cower down to the talking points of the left. From the very outset, from the very beginning, I have been for tariffs because historically America was for tariffs. Alexander Hamilton wrote up the whole concept of the federal budget at the establishment of our nation on tariffs. William McKinley wrote them all the way to the White House. Abraham Lincoln used them to help restore the economy after the Civil War. So I'm for the tariffs. However, we have to offset it by slashing taxes, slashing regulation, and also lowering the interest rates to help stimulate money flow, cash flow within our nation. I want to really talk about though. I'm more like to talk about the cultural things than necessarily the economic things, but I like all of it. We talk about all of it here. I want to talk about Jimmy Kimmel uh, being taken off air indefinitely and how Hollywood is in an uproar, which I find it very funny that they're in an uproar because they wanted to cancel us on everything. They wanted to cancel us off YouTube, off of Facebook, off of Twitter, now X, off of every social media platform. They wanted to demonetize us. And matter of fact, they wanted us to get fired. That's why I find it very interesting that they're crying out, cancel culture, cancel culture. My employer's firing me because I'm celebrating the death of a fellow American citizen. And these are the same ones that wanted to wreck and ruin our lives. And it's interesting that Haman, who actually created gallows poles to hang us on them, seems to be hanging on their own poles right now of their own destruction. Jimmy Kimmel wants to come out and wants to cry about it, and Hollywood wants to cry about it. And what actually got Jimmy Kimmel kicked off air? See, Jimmy Kimmel got kicked off air because he said the assassin was a MAGA person, was a far right killing the lesser right. And this has been a talking point lie on much of the social media today from all the radical leftists. They have been trying to spin this thing, and it's gotten so sick now that there's some in the mainstream media that are actually trying to turn the very story of the assassin into a romantic love story because Charlie Kirk was the hateful one with his hate speech and he was killing the trans movement. And so they want to make it into a romantic love story that the assassin was actually deeply in love with his male roommate who was transitioning into a woman, and he was just, and also from everything I'm seeing was a part of the furry club. And so he was just romantically in love with him, and he wanted to protect him from the mean, hateful Charlie Kirk that was killing the trans movement. And so they're trying to twist this into a romantic love story. Notice the radical left always turns the criminals into heroes. Mangione, who kills a insurance CEO in cold blood murder downtown Manhattan, who happened to be a father and a husband who worked himself into that position. I have problems with the industry of the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance industry as well. But we don't justify taking a gun and killing somebody. We try to argue it out intellectually. We try to argue it out economic. We try to argue it out with policy, and we try to argue it out with scripture. See, that's what the radical left does. That's not what the conservative side of the aisle does. Yes, there's always going to be these fringe people on every side, but predominantly the radical left has become a party of violence and a party of intolerance, while wearing the mask is saying they're the tolerant ones that are trying to fight against the violent ones. They flip it upside down, inside out. They make good evil and evil good. They make bitter sweet and sweet bitter, and they wear the face of a lamb while they're nothing more than a beast within trying to destroy our country, destroy our nation, and ultimately destroy the Bible because they want to run God out of our country, just like every Marxist wanted to run God out of their countries. However, we know the lies. We know how this story goes. We're not being deceived by it anymore. The general public's not being deceived by it anymore. I'm getting these people that are trying to combat me on platforms and trying to say that us people that believe in conservative principles are the KKK reinstituted. That's why you all lost the last election. And you're going to keep losing elections as long as you don't wake up and understand that the party of woke is actually the ones that are asleep. They don't know how to play the game anymore, and they're not even good at lying anymore. And so Jimmy Kimmel and Hollywood that wanted to crush all of us, and Jimmy Kimmel and them that wanted to go out there and say that anybody who took ivermectin was taking a horse dewormer, not realizing it was used for human purposes for many, many years, for centuries or for decades. And they came out and they lied about that. They lied about one thing after another, and there's never been any consequences, any repercussions. But on the other hand, us who have spoken truth, us who question the China virus, which you couldn't say, even though it came from China, whether it came out of the laboratory in Wuhan, whether Americans were funding it through tax dollars, through NIAIH and all of these other acronyms, and whether Dr. Flip Flop Fauci was lying to us. If you question all of that, you were a conspiracy theorist who was being demonetized and taken off social media, while those that were lying to us continually were able to get fame and fortune. However, the tide is turning now, as you can see. You see that Stephen Colbert is no longer on air because, sorry, I'm getting messages coming through as I'm talking right now. You see that Stephen Colbert is no longer on air because the general public realized that he was lying to them. And so he was losing his ratings. And all of a sudden, they couldn't pay for him to continue to lose ratings because even the Marxist communists understand that you have to make money to live and exist in society. You can't have employers without making money. Hmm. I guess they're capitalists too, aren't they? You see, they lie on one hand and believe another thing. And they believe a lot of things we believe in. They just sell the lies so that the general public that'll buy into it, they give them power and give them prestige and position and renown, honorable powers so that they can keep their control and keep their income flowing in. They do one thing and they live out another life. It's like all of these radical leftists, especially in the state of California, that want to push LGBTQ2 plus and trans ideology down on the kids and make them social justice warriors, but then they put their kids in a private school or homeschool because they don't want them to go to those schools and learn all of that. You see, they sell their soul for media control. And that's the title of this episode today. They sell their soul for media control, and now they're paying the price for selling their soul for media control. Jimmy Kimmel's finding out about that. Stephen Colbert found out about that. You find that many of them are finding Don Lemon had found out about that. And so they're finding out that when you sell your soul for media control, there eventually is a price. You may gain short term power, but it's going to eventually catch up with you. You know why? Because the American people are not dumb. They're not stupid. I'm glad to be American. We're not dumb people. Most of the world is not dumb. Most of the world can figure it out after a matter of time. If they have any intellectualism to them and dig out past the very surface level, they're going to find out the radical left has been continuously lying to them and continues to lie to them. And they continue to lie by calling us fascist and Nazi. And now they're trying to make the very assassin into a romantic lover who is just trying to defend his romantic lover who is becoming a girl, transitioning to a girl and was a furry. They want to begin to propagate the criminals while they begin to suppress anybody who believes in lawfulness. That's why they were out in the streets burning down cities and nuking down middle class businesses and hurting police officers and their own fellow citizens and their own cities who are trying to build businesses that's helping the income of their own city. Yet they would go out there and harm them. And you find that Calamity Kami Harris would bail out the rioters and they would begin to propagate all of that. You have Chris Cuomo on CNN saying, who says that rioting has to be peaceful? Who says that protesting has to be peaceful? You see, everything they're doing, they're claiming the opposite, and they're trying to put their motives on us because this is a part of the human nature. The human nature is to believe that the opposite side is like you. Sometimes we on our side, we get the benefit of doubt because we believe that their motives are good because our motives are good. They think they're being just because we're trying to be just. We think that they're trying to be right because we're trying to be right. On the other hand, a lot of times they're putting their motives on us. They wake up to try to figure out how to deceive people, so they think we're trying to deceive people. You find that the radical leftist administration was trying to circumvent the Constitution, so they think we're trying to circumvent the Constitution. They wanted to empower unelected bureaucrats so that they could suppress the rights and they could suppress us into their tyranny. So they think Donald Trump is doing that. They wanted to go after their political opponents, so they think Donald Trump is going after his political opponents. They try to manipulate, so they think Trump is trying to manipulate. You see, they're trying to put on us everything that is inside of their heart. Usually, you can tell what the radical left is doing by just listening to what they're claiming the other side is doing. And you see, they've been talking about how Trump is going after his political opponents. Why did they do that? Because they were trying to go after their political opponents. They think Trump is going to try to manipulate the system to try to go after every political opposition there is to put them behind bars or worse. Why? Because that's what they were trying to do to Trump and anybody who was on the conservative side of the aisle. You see, they used January 6th to try to justify that. January 6th, there was things that should not have happened there, but in comparison to BLM riots, in comparison to Antifa, and remember, BLM and Antifa went after federal buildings as well. They were defacing monuments, and they burned down St. John Church, where Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death." They were at the Capitol, but yet it wasn't ever treated that way because it's a two-tier justice system. You see, they were bailed out, but the man with the horn hat, who I don't agree with, who was let in pretty easily, who put his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk, which he shouldn't have, ended up getting the book thrown at him. He was put in a hole because we have a two-tier justice system because of George Soros' money and his organizations and left wing organizations, to which I believe Donald Trump should use the RICO Act, just like they were trying to use the RICO Act on him improperly. He should use the RICO Act and he should go after those that are funding lawlessness in our streets and funding these two tier justice. Judges that are trying to exercise and implement two-tier justice to try to suppress all the conservatives in the fear while beginning to propagate all the lies on the left. So they put their motives on Trump. And what they were trying to do, they're saying Trump is trying to do. Now, Trump is trying to bring law and order, and he should. Trump is trying to crack down on criminal activity, and he should. Trump is trying to crack down on the funding of criminal activity, and he should. But you see, the reason why they call January 6th a treasonous act and an attempt to overthrow our system, even though they know very well that they're lying to us time and time and time again. The reason that they did that is because as long as they call it an act to try to overturn um, our system, they can begin to try to call it treasonous, and then they can begin to justify going after their political opposition. And we see that they even tried to do that to Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. That is now being leaked out, and now that is coming out to us. Cash Patel and them are making us realize, and they're informing us that the Lion Joe Biden administration, the Calamity Kami Harris administration, the radical leftists were trying to deemed that as the language of January 6th so that they could justify going after their political opposition. And it wasn't to try to save democracy, as they say. It wasn't try to save our republic or save our government or save our constitution. It was so that they could keep Donald Trump out of running for the 2020 election because they knew there's the potential chance he's going to win, especially when you got a dead corpse that you put up there to debate against him. And I don't know why they didn't just borrow some stuff from his son Hunter to give him a little bit of energy at the debate. I mean, I don't agree with that, but obviously they don't have a lot of principles and morals. So if you got a dead corpse running against a man that's pretty, and then they try to twist that. They try to say, well, Joe Biden, I mean, he's bench pressing, he's doing backflips, he's running marathons, but Trump, he needs to take an IQ test. He's not looking very good. Oh, where did Trump go? He's been gone for a week. He must have died. Well, Joe Biden was missing for a month. They flipped the whole story inside out. So here's the trick. Here's the lesson for you. Everything the Democrats are saying, everything the radical left is saying about our side, just go, thank you for exposing yourself. Now we know what you're trying to do. You see, they tried to call uh, the the Capitol riot that's trying to overturn a duly elected official because they wanted to also justify enhancing their federal agencies so that they could go and they can spy out on the American people. Remember when they were trying to get the Postal Service to spy out on Americans? Go look that one up for a little bit. They were trying to expand their departments so that they can spy out on the American people. Who else does that? I don't know. China. They were even trying to use the Federal Reserve as the banking system for all Americans, and they were trying to crush smaller banking systems by putting systems in place that says anybody that's getting more than $600 worth of cash or any transaction more than $600, the banking systems would have to have systems in place to be able to track that down. And because small banking systems wouldn't have had the capability like bigger banking systems. They were trying to centralize it through the Federal Reserve. And then they were also trying to push a digital currency on us while Janet Yellen under Lion Biden administration came out and tried to destroy cryptocurrency because it was a competitor against their digital currency. At the same time, they were trying to push ESG scoring, environmental social governance scoring, and then they were trying to track digital footprints so that way they can try to look and see what are you supporting? Are you for social justice causes? Are you against social justice causes? Are you for environmental friendly replacement of gasoline and uh, replacement of things that have a carbon footprint for renewable energy? Are you trying to hurt that? Are you willing to bend to our tyrannical government edicts or not? And so they wanted to exercise what was a great reset, which they called a conspiracy theory, and it wasn't. How did they try to implement all of this? By redefining the language and trying to put on the conservative side of the aisle exactly what they're trying to do so they can justify going after their political opposition and even the general public every which way they can so that they could try to get an endless victory of elections. They wanted to run us into the grave so that they would never lose their power again. That's why they tried to assassinate Donald Trump when he was going to win the election, because and when they thought he could potentially win the election, because he was the hand grenade on their whole parade. That's why they got so upset when Hillary Clinton lost the election, because they had a game plan in mind. They never wanted us to win another election. You see, the Paris Climate Accord became the ESG Great Reset. They had a plan in place, and every time Trump would get elected, he was messing up that plan. They had a global agenda. George Soros is a globalist who believes the United States of America and our individual sovereignty is getting in the way of the globalist agenda, and he was the one funding Barack Obama. He was the one that was funding Hillary Clinton at the State Department for eventually for her to win the election. He's the one that's buying off judges and making a two-tier justice system, him and other ones like him. And see, they were trying to infiltrate the system. And when Barack Obama came on the scene, he started pushing DEI so that he could take the very Marxist principles of the proletariat and the bourgeoisie fighting one another. He could begin to twist that, because instead of getting the rich and the poor fighting against each other, because Marx didn't understand the power of the middle class and didn't understand that I'm not against my employer is not against me, didn't understand all of that. And he thought he could get systems uprooted by getting them fighting against one another. It didn't work well in America. So you had Bell, you had Dewey, you had other ones, and they would come in and they would try to uh, change that dynamic a little bit so that they can try to still get their end cause, their end result in place. And so instead of getting the rich and the poor always fighting against each other, because Bernie Sanders keeps trying to do that, he should be feeding pigeons on a park bench somewhere. He keeps trying to do that, but over and over again, it's not working. So, but they knew that there was slavery, there was segregation in America. It's a hot topic. They knew that there was civil rights, the civil rights movement of the 1950s to 1960s. So that's a prominent issue in America. So they begin to change it. Instead of trying to get the rich and the poor to fight against one another, why don't we just try to get the racial social classes fighting against each other? Why don't we get the black community, the white community, the Hispanic community? Why don't we get them all fighting against one another? Why don't we propagate lies using George Floyd's death, using the gentle giant of Ferguson's death? And why don't we throw fuel on racial tension so that we can try to get them fighting in the streets, get our politician to say that he has the answer to calm all of this down and to get America on the right path and use the top down, bottom up, flip the system inside out. The whole Marxist ideology that's always been there, still there today. So they're the ones that do this, but they claim that Donald Trump is trying to trying to go after his political opposition, trying to manipulate manipulate the system, manipulate the very justice system to go after their political opposition, when it's exactly what the radical left has been doing to us. They were even trying to do that to Charlie Kirk. There was nobody in the media space on the right or the left that was more dignified, more respectful than Charlie Kirk. Yes, he argued out his ideas. Yes, he had passion behind it. But there was nobody that was more dignified and more calm and collective and respectful than Charlie Kirk. There was nobody that had probably greater intentions on the media space, left or right, that was prominent in the media space than Charlie Kirk. And yet they wanted to go after him, and they wanted to go after Turning Point USA. If they can go after them, they'll go after any of us. Thank God President Trump won the election. Who knows where we would be today. We might not even have the ability to get this message out on YouTube. We might not even be able to get this message out on any social media platform. Remember, they were trying to cancel us out. That's exactly what Adolf Hitler and the fascists did. See, they claim that Trump is a fascist while they're exercising and trying to implement fascistic ideas that's blended with Marxist ideas. They're the ones that, just like Adolf Hitler and the Nazis that wanted to control the airspace, what was on the radio, not, they're the ones that were trying to control. They were trying to use Jeff Bezos and Amazon control the internet so we wouldn't have the ability. Anybody remember Parler coming out? Anybody remember the reason why Parler came out? Why do we have all of these private individual uh, media spaces on the conservative right? Is because the left tried to dominate it by government political control, trying to sync up the media and politics together. This is what Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda, wrote about, whom Woodrow Wilson, who I deem to be the father of progressivism. Some people say Theodore Roosevelt. Really, I think it's Woodrow Wilson that propagated a lot of things that the radical left enjoy and they want to implement in our society. But Woodrow Wilson wanted to bring the League of Nations, and he really wanted to bring a world domination and a one world government. And so Woodrow Wilson was using Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda's ideas, to try to sync up government and media and make it a secret, shadowy force that can pull on the very strings of the general public as if we're all puppets. It was so powerful that when Joseph Goebbels got a hold of it, he was able to help create the Führer cult around Adolf Hitler. Edward Bernays actually had regrets about that one. You see, that's exactly what they're trying to do today. They're trying to control media. They're trying to control the education system. They're trying to control the justice system. They're trying to control every courtroom. They're trying to control every political space so that they can shift the whole culture in the society. And the biggest way they do that is by redefining the language. As you heard me say over and over again, it's how Satan did it in the garden. It's still how he's doing it today through the radical left and anybody who wants to throw away biblical principles and conservative values. They try to redefine the language and they redefine the terms so that they can turn the Constitution into something it was never intended to be, turn laws into something they were never intended to be, so that they can justify going after their political opposition. And that's why they claim that Trump's doing it, is because that's what they're doing. But they're finding out there's a price for selling your soul for media control. We find that Jimmy Kimmel's finding out about that. We find that Stephen Colbert found out about that. Don Lemon found out about that. Many others found out about that. Many more will because they don't seem to learn. But I have no sense of remorse for the companies that had to fire them, and I'm not going to applaud them because I don't think they did it because they wanted to. I think they did it because they didn't have a choice. Jimmy Kimmel wanted to paint the picture that this was a far right MAGA person killing the lesser right MAGA person, and these lies they're being spilled out over and over again, which I find it funny that the ones that were trying to debate me online seem to go quiet on me. They kind of went in stealth mode. I'm sure they'll come out with some other ignorant lying statement later on. Now there's prices to be paid, and thank God for it, because we need to shut out the lies if we're going to be able to have a civilized nation. I'm glad that the right's voice is now being elevated and the lies of the left are now being debunked, and not only debunked, but now there's consequences for their actions. And I thank God for that. America, I love you. I thank God we're winning. I'm sorry that we have had some tragedy, but we're winning, and they're in the corner. They know they're in the corner, and that's why they're coming out with violence. And as a matter of fact, I just heard Glenn Beck say that while he was on air doing Charlie Kirk's uh, radio program or his podcast and that there was a bomb threat, and so the show got a little disrupted because of a bomb threat. There was a bomb threat at a Fox News van in Utah, and the bomb squad was happening to go to Arizona ahead of the events because the radical left has become the party of violence, and they have become the intolerant party, even though they claim to be the opposite. The radical left does not value life. They want to be humanists that devalue the understanding of God. They want to say they're elevating humanity while they're actually relegating humanity down to nothing more than just animals, and sometimes Christy Nome type of animals. No offense to Christy Nome, and I'm just making a jab for fun. I like Christy Nome, but anyways, So they become the party of intolerance and violence while claiming that that's what we are. And they say we're violent because of speech, while they're violent because of guns, even though they say they're against guns. See how hypocritical it is? See how they continue to lie to us? America has been waking up, and I'm glad they're waking up. And America, I love you. Let's stay awake and defeat the woke. God bless you.